All right, good morning, everyone. This is Gus Lopez speaking. This forum is sponsored by SUNsource, sponsored and motivated by and then pushed by and everything coming good from SUNsource. So I just want to say, thank you, Ginger, for letting me speak to this audience and share a little bit about my experience. And we'll try to have a two-way conversation during this presentation so I can hear from you guys as well. All right, so going to the next slide here. I'll start presenting myself, and then I'm going to ask everyone on the call to present themselves. Like I said, my name is Gus Lopez. I'm currently working for Apex Tool Group. We are a manufacturer of hand tools and power tools with several brands you might have heard of, including Crescent, Weller, Lufkin, Gear Wrench, among many others. And I'm currently a super user manager. So I'm an SAP super user program manager here at Apex Tool Group. How about you, Debbie? Can you just quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Debbie Hagner. I'm from B. Braun Medical. We've had super users in place since probably 1997. However, our program's kind of fallen apart, and we're trying to regroup it again. So.
All right. Thank you for sharing, Debbie. What about you, Greg?
Hi, my name's Greg Mitchell. I'm currently working on a major implementation project out here at Phillips 66 down in Houston. We just did, it's an SAP, a major SAP rollout. We just went live about a month ago with a major release, and we're lining up for the next one. So I'm the super user lead on the project. So I'm the one organizing and putting together super users for the overall project. So.
All right, great. I have worked for Holly Frontier before. So Holly Frontier and Phillips 66 do business. They are each other's customers, each other's competitors, and so on. Thank you,
I'm sorry,
Greg.
I missed. Okay, sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
And hi, I'm Terry Walker. I am with Brown and Tolan Physicians Group out here in California. I have been part of the leaderboard group for a number of years, but I just have this brand new role here as change and training manager at Brown and Tolan, and we're implementing over a 2-year project, EPIC, which is an electronic health records system. And we were starting our build and configuration of EPIC this week with analysts, and I'm putting a training presentation together to deliver this morning, and we're going to be talking about the need for super users. So we're going to be, as well as trainers. So it'll be really interesting to come full circle again to be leading a new super user group, which has not yet been formed.
That sounds exciting. It's good to start the right way, and I know you're going to do that. So thanks for sharing, Terry.
Thank you.
Diego, are you on the call, Diego?
Hey, he's on the call, and he sent some text messages to let us know he can't use his microphone right now.
All right.
So he did give an intro. So Diego is with a company in Guatemala called CMI. He is a member of the SUNsource leaderboard, and he says he's super glad to be here. And he leads a super user network program with 3 super user networks now, with over 100 super users across 7 different countries. So that's Diego.
Awesome.
Yeah. I feel proud of him, and I feel a little bit sorry for him at the same time.
That's really funny. So I'll interfere for Diego. So if he has questions, I'll be monitoring the chat, and then Gus, I'll just let you know.
All right, thank you. Ginger, everybody knows you, but you want to go ahead and introduce yourself again?
Yeah, actually, a couple of people on the call might not. So Ginger Luttrell, the founder of SUNsource, been working with super users and super user leaders and super user networks since 1998, so a super long time. And if you haven't had a chance to take a look at our website, you want to do that. And then we also have a book out there as well. And if you don't have a copy of the book, then you can reach out to me and I can make sure you get a copy. So Gus, thanks so much for hosting this first one. Really, really excited about this forum.
All right, thank you, Ginger. All right, so let's move on. We're here to talk about the challenge, right? And I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that one of the biggest challenges for sustaining and starting a super user network is budget, right? It's having the budget to kick off something that is relatively new to the corporate world, which is having a super user network that is independent from a specific major project, right? So it's a big challenge to work without having a budget initially, or not knowing really well what your budget's going to be, or not being able to show the ROI right away to justify that budget. So I want to hear a little bit from you guys on if that's accurate. I mean, you know, I might be saying it's a challenge that applies to most companies, but I want to hear from you, and I just want you to confirm if it is the case, or if you have seen super user networks that did not have sufficient budget. I'll start with you, Terry. Have you seen that happening before?
Actually, I have used to lead a super user group for another organization, had about 400 super users. Yes, it was really mostly project-based, but then we continued to support those super users. But once the budget ended and organizational changes occurred, the entire group was disbanded. So that was unfortunate, very unfortunate. Great group of people. And now I'm with another organization, but we, again, this is going to be a budget funded project over 2 years, but my challenge will be, once that project completes, to continue to move past that and continue to have it supported.
Okay, yeah, thanks for sharing. Anyone else would like to talk about any challenge they had regarding budget?
Hey guys, this is Diego.
Hi, Diego.
Thank you. Now I've got the mic available now. Thank you for that, Ginger, earlier. So yeah, I think budget definitely has been one of the main challenges we've faced as part of our super user network program. It seems like at sometimes people sees the value of super user networks and the value of super users, but when the rubber meets the road and it's budget time and you have to start planning ahead and put a number out there, there's always that concern of, you know, can you spend less? You know, can you do it with less resources? And to me, it's always been a challenge, because it seems like year after year, we try to come out with communication and with executive sponsorship and with different messages across the organization, showing the results from our network. And yet, every time that the budget cycle comes around, there's always that pressure of, you know, where can we cut on costs? And if you look at the investment from an ERP standpoint, how much it costs for you to not only implement, but also to maintain a system, the amount of money that's allocated to sustaining something like a super user network is very minimal compared to the costs of the IT infrastructure. And yet it seems like they want to, or I mean, they are aware they need to invest on tools and the technology, but it's such a hard conversation to try to get them on the mindset of, you also need to invest on the users, and these are the people that are actually using the system. So I can totally relate to what you're saying, and I can attest that over the past 3 years, you know, you would expect that every year it'll be a little easier to have that conversation, and yet again, there's always that challenge of how do you really make your point of the value that's generating and the return that you're getting from the money that you're investing on the network? So definitely one of the main challenges we face.
All right, thanks for sharing, Diego. Yeah, I think all that we're going to be talking about in the next 30 minutes is going to be around how do you show the value of your program, the value of your network, how do you show ROI, and that talks directly to having a budget, right? We need the metrics. We need to have our super users performing as super user. We need that program to be sustained on the long term, and I think all of that kind of goes back to what this image is telling us here. You know, we need the budget, right? So we'll be talking about it. Our next challenge is what do you guys think this image represents? I'll let you talk. Anyone has any guess? It's the other very important resource a company needs to work with, which is time, right? So one of the challenge for usually on the early stages, I think, of the program, when you're still selecting your super users, when you're still preparing your super user, when you're still finding who the best people in the business are to become super users, the challenge you might face from potential super users themselves is, I don't think I'm going to have the time to be a super user. Has anyone ever heard that before? Someone saying, you know, I love it. It's a great program. It's a great idea. I can see the value. But me personally, I don't think I'm going to have the time.
Gus, I don't think it's just the end user or the super user saying it. I think it's their manager who says, I don't think we have the time to devote this employee of mine to be a super user. You know, they've got a lot on their plate.
Exactly. Yeah, it happens on the super user level, and it happens on their managers and directors level as well. I think you're exactly right, and it's a very common initial pushback when you're recruiting new super users to the program. I want to hear a little bit from maybe from Debbie. Debbie, is that something you can see happening?
Yes, we don't have any budget, one. We expect our super users just to take it on as part of their job. And of course, they don't have enough time to do that. So we are trying to look at some kind of compensation to make it more enticing for them to become a super user.
Great. Yeah, you talked about another challenge, and which is keeping that motivation, right, coming from the super users. I think it's important as well. So let me talk a little bit about how I have worked or tried to work around, you know, the argument that super users won't have the time to dedicate to the program, and I've seen great results. What I tell my super users is, in the medium and long term, you are actually going to save time by becoming a super user. You're not only saving your own time, but you're saving companies' time in general, right? So let's talk about this for a second. The way it works is, if you have a very active super user network, you're going to be providing support, you're going to be delivering training, you're going to be delivering training materials. So let me talk about training materials specifically. I've had super users, after 6 months being on a program, coming back to me and saying, hey guys, this is one of the best things I made in the last year. That's one of the best things I've done in the last year. And they say, why is that? And they say, well, I was wasting a lot of time kind of answering the same questions over and over again. And now with the help of the Super User Network, I mean, we have this video now, or we have this e-learning course now, or we have some other super users who are taking some of those questions also. So they come back and say, now my life is a little bit easier because I became a super user. So that's how they are gaining time. And when you look at all the people around the super users that are being helped by the super users, then that time savings go up even more because they all start being more effective on their jobs. They all start knowing where to go when they need to navigate the system. They start understanding the processes better, and all that saves time. So it's an illusion, really, to think that by becoming a super user, you're going to be spending a lot of time that you don't have. It's the other way around. In the medium and long term, you start saving time, right? Yes, of course, you're going to need to have some super user training. You will need to participate in meetings, and you need to learn how to become a productive super user. That takes some time, but it's truly an investment on the medium and long term. All right, so let's, oh, that's a tricky one. Okay, I won't ask you guys to guess what this image represents because this is, this is going to be, you know, hard to guess. But the fish is representing the super users and the super user network, right? And the shark is a big project, right? So when you have a big implementation project or you're expanding your SAP or any system really that you're running your company to other locations, or there was a big merger between two companies and now one needs to be up to date on the processes and systems of the bigger company, you'll sometimes attach those super users to a project, right? It is a symbiotic relationship, just like this one. Apparently, those striped fish, they clean the shark, you know, they eat all the parasites that attach to the shark. So the shark does not eat them because the fish is helping the shark, you know, keep itself clean. And the shark protects the fish, right? So it's a symbiotic relationship, just like you have with the super users and the super user in the projects and the major IT projects. But here's where the challenge is. A sustainable super user network needs to be project agnostic. Okay, so if you want to think super user network long term, if you truly want all the benefits you can get from a super user network, it needs to be project agnostic. So yes, it's nice to have a shark, but it's important to understand that you need to survive as a school of fish only without the need of that big shark. So, all right, inspired by this picture, what did I just say makes sense? Can you see that happening in real life?
Yes.
Yes, I think that this is so true to so many super user networks that have disbanded once that the implementation from a specific system wraps up. But to your point, I think that one of the challenges also is that we keep seeing more and more, for example, in our company, that the executives are asking us, well, what's that one strategic objective or that one strategic goal that the super user network is going to focus on for the year? And it's almost like, to your point, like, what's that one big project that you guys are going to focus on that that we can definitely see a before and an after you guys got in? So it feels like, even though it has to be able to sustain itself without the shark, it's almost like every year we want the super user network to have a shark to hold on to. So we keep forcing that because in our case, we have finished our implementation. We're not yet doing the transition to HANA or to another, software, but we are at that point where it feels like we want to force a shark upon the community year after year, because that's where it just makes sense, or that's like where the more, I guess, the comfort zone in a lot of senses is, because you are definitely trying to cling into a larger than yourself project that will ultimately deliver some sort of result. But I think that the biggest challenge is, how do you keep the community engaged before, during, and after a project comes in, because there are going to be projects rolling in and out all the time. So definitely think that that's just something that we have experienced, and that I'd be interested in hearing from others as well, how they're handling this type of relationship.
Yeah, I'm gonna let somebody else talk before I do. So I see there's Carla Chandler is on the call. Can you hear us, Carla?
Yes.
Hi, sorry, we didn't get you to introduce yourself. So I'm gonna ask you to quickly introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about the challenges of superuser networks attached to projects.
I'm Carla Chandler. I work at Bell. I think what we run into is the same things of others that have been brought up, is the amount of time and that people are willing to allocate. And also the challenges, you do good documentation, you put stuff out there, and people still won't go out and be self-service and start using it, even with the training. So that is a little frustrating, discouraging of the things that we run into here.
Yeah, you talked about the 3 or 4 different challenges there, and those are very real and very present on a lot of companies and a lot of projects out there. So thank you for your feedback. Let's go with Terry. Terry, would you like to talk a little bit about superuser networks attached projects and not being able to sustain themselves without the projects?
Well, again, what happened with our last organization was just that. Our team that supported over 400 super users, where we began with a project, it was a travel and expense project, and it was a 2-year project. And from that, we continued to grow that super user network, make it available to the organization for pilot training of new things, focus groups, user acceptance testing of upgrades, those types of things. But again, once the org changed and once everyone got up to speed on that initial project they were part of, it was disbanded. It's unfortunate. And I think what could have really helped was continued marketing to the executive level for that super user, just again as some of the things that we need to talk about as far as being project agnostic, to keep it sustainable, and really show them the value of, yes, here's the time it takes initially up front with learning their new role, training and testing and supporting projects and or other initiatives, versus the time saved being productive, less tickets to a help desk, and having a super user on your team actually brings more productivity to the entire team. So, but you need to be able to market that. You need to sell that to the folks that will be giving you the money to sustain your program.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think like I was saying, it's a good thing to have a big project, because then you can show more clearly the value of super users. But it's just as important to start measuring the impact the super user network has outside any project. So even if there is a big project going on, and even if most of your work is around that big project, please still keep track of what you are doing that's detached from that project, and all the value you're bringing to the company that's not directly related to the project, right? So, you very rarely will have a project that will touch all the departments at once and change everything at once, right? You still need to run your business on an old system, on old processes, and you still can help with those old systems or processes that are outside the major project. And I think it's important to document it and to show it. And then when the project's over, you go back to your executives like Terry was saying, and say, look, yes, the super users help during the project, but let's think about how much impact they can continue having in our processes and bringing value to our company outside in projects, right? So it's important to paint that picture. All right, let's move on. So I'm gonna ask Sandra Morad to introduce herself before we talk about this slide. Sandra?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I'm Sandra Morath. I work for a commercial metals company, and I'm our lead in our sales area. I've been doing our project work from when we implemented, and then I lead our super users currently since the business is not owning it.
Yeah.
So we pretty much everything that everybody else has said, and we're trying to kind of reestablish our network back up.
I know. It's the story of my life.
Yep.
So Sandra, I want to put you on the spot. What's wrong with this picture? What's missing here? What we're not seeing?
Labels?
Exactly. We're not seeing labels. That's exactly right. And that's what I wanted to show. Those graphs you're looking at here, they don't say anything. There are no labels. There are no numbers attached to it. There's nothing indicating what it is. I could just have, a blank slide. And that's what's coming out of super users networks from the executive points of view a lot of times. Okay, so a lot of times executives are hearing about the super user network. They might have one or two anecdotes about how well the super user network is working, but if they don't see metrics, if they don't see the labels, if they don't see the numbers on their screens, it becomes much, much harder to go to that first challenge we talked about, which is having a budget. Okay, so I really want you guys to think about this, and this is a huge soapbox of mine. Think about metrics, think about what are you measuring, think about how those numbers that are coming out of a good functioning super user network mean to the bottom line of the company. And I'm not saying it's easy to do, okay? Ginger and Diego and myself, we have been for many, many years now talking about ROI and how, you show the ROI of a super user network, okay? But it's a conversation that needs to be on the table. It's a topic that needs to be analyzed and discussed, okay? And it's something that as a super user leader, you have to be thinking about all the time. So let me talk about my case here in my current company now, right? What we are measuring and how we are showing that value of our program, okay? So let's start with the easiest things to measure, training delivery. Right? I have super users delivering training. We're measuring the number of hours of training they are delivered, how many people are attending those classes, okay? Where we're not yet, but I've done it in the past before, is measuring how that new knowledge is making our associates more productive, okay? Why I'm not doing that now yet, because somehow we're still building our program. So I truly don't have the time to go into that granular level yet that I wish I could go to and say, hey, after training A, employee B, C, D, and F are more productive and they are saving X number of hours per month using this new knowledge, those new reports they didn't know about. Right? That's the ideal situation you want to do. So that's training delivery. Now let me talk a little bit about end user support. I have my super users documenting all the ad hoc support they're providing. So even when people come to them, knock on their doors and say, hey, can you help me with this? Even that is being documented because that's part of being a super user, right? And there's a lot of value in that. In our company, we were able to reduce the number of tickets that were coming to the help desk that were related to questions only, right? It was not there was nothing broken. they just had questions regarding our system. So we were able to reduce it's 1/5 of what it was a year and a half ago before we had the super user network. So it was a huge improvement, truly a huge improvement. Okay, so we improved our number of tickets coming 80%. So we have 80% less tickets coming now as the super user network. So that's something else you can measure, right? The other thing you can measure is the impact of training materials, right? If you have a learning management system, an LMS, you can see how many downloads those training materials had, and you can start putting numbers into, wow, you know, I had one super user dedicating maybe 3 or 4 hours of their time to create this one work instruction, but this work instruction was downloaded 500 times, had 500 people viewing it. So think about the impact that brings, right? So once you start putting all those numbers together, then you start creating that picture of, here's the value, here's the return on investment in our program. All right. Okay. I like this picture a lot. So I'll start with this one. That guy lying down, he represents not only, you know, our executives, our super user managers, but also other departments in the company. I think, you know, one of the biggest challenges for sustaining a super user network is having support from everyone. And I really mean everyone. I'm talking about executives, I'm talking about the HR department, I'm talking about the communication department if you have one, I'm talking about, you know, other areas in IT. My program happens to be under IT department, so I need every other team in the IT department to be supporting the program. So that's a big challenge, and but that needs to happen for a long-term sustainment of a program. So do you guys recognize this challenge? I'm gonna ask Greg, since he has not talked a lot. Greg, do you recognize that having, you know, support from other departments is important to a super user network?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a big challenge. Part of it is just getting the big challenge here is essentially getting the idea that the super user network should continue beyond the massive projects that are being run. So building that support and starting to make the case for that is going to be one of the challenges we've got here over the next year or two.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah. I'm going to ask Carla again. Carla, do you think this is a challenge? Have you seen something similar?
Yes, we run in, yeah, it's quite common around here.
Yeah, okay. So that what has happened before with some of the programs I have run before, where initially you have to start counting your small wins. You know, you have to start with the low-hanging fruit to start building the trust in the results the program is going to bring to the company. Okay, so I remember when we first started our program here, very simple things were that we didn't have before. I was putting it in a showcase and say, look, this is what we're doing now. Like, I remember one early example was, how do you find where procured part is coming from in the system? A very simple question, right? I have something here on my DC. I want to know from what plant it came from or for what vendor that item came from. It's easy to show in the system, but nobody knew how to do that. And it's the kind of thing that, you know, hundreds of our users need to know in our case, right? Where is a part coming from? I have a procured part here, or I have a procured SKU here. Where is that? What is that coming from? right? So we created a little video instruction with the help of 2 super users at the time. And then we start sending it out to people and saying, hey, do you think this is something that could help you? And we got all kinds of feedback saying, oh yeah, this is great. I've always needed to know that. That's going to save me so much time. And with that, I right away went to my manager and to his director and so on, and say, look, this is a very tiny, small example of the impact we are going to bring to the company regarding knowledge and knowing how to use the system and how to run our processes, right? So do not underestimate how important those early wins are, because they are a reflection of what program is going to be once it's mature. All right, anybody else would like to talk about support before we move to the next slide, or?
Gus, this is Terry. As far as support too, and I'm going to kind of back up a little bit too. You had mentioned how your super users document, and so you can see how they're doing less tickets to the help desk, or how they are supporting, and there's more productivity across the organization because of their training or their documentation or building training materials. How are your super users documenting all of this? And how is it being captured, and how do you use that information?
Good question. Okay, so training they deliver is documented in our LMS. So that's straightforward. We enter the training they deliver. It can be done after the fact. A lot of times it's done after the fact. The super users, they have this IoT training class being delivered in their location, and they come to me in the next day and say, hey, can you log in this training class I delivered? We had 5 people coming in. We talked about Material Master, right? So that's easy. Then you have documentation. All our documentation is also being published in our LMS. So it's, you can see all the documents that have been created by the Super User Network. They are now published in our learning management system. It's the library in our learning management system. And you can also see the number, like I said, the number of downloads you have of those documents, right? So that's another metric. The ad hoc support is probably the hardest one to measure, because in my company, we made the decision not to add too many layers. We didn't want to become like a help desk where you have to enter a ticket to get an answer to a question. So we're doing after the fact as well. Once a month, we go to a form, it's on SurveyMonkey, and we just basically just fill out and say, hey, these are the case, the times I delivered ad hoc support to end users. So, depending on the activity, it's a different way of measuring, but the important thing is we are measuring, right? We are making sure those numbers are there, documented.
Thank you, that was very helpful.
Thank you, Terry. No problem. Okay, so here's a quick summary of what we just saw. The top challenge, insufficient budget, super users time, or the expectation their managers, their directors think that their time is going to be like, right? So that they get a little anxious when you talk about super user networks and they don't know about how much time they're going to spend on the program. One thing I didn't mention, and I want to mention now, is the fact that super users, a lot of times, they are already doing some of those tasks and activities we expect from official super users, right? So there's a lot of super users that when you go and talk to them about what they need to do as super users, they look back and say, but that's what I do already. I support people, I put documentation together, I create those documents, I deliver some training classes now and then, and they say, great. So you have nothing to lose and everything to gain, because you get all the benefits of being in a super user network that you didn't have before, right? And you're not adding anything to your workload, right? You're just maybe just tracking it a little better, maybe you're documenting it a little better. But look, you're going to have the support of the super user network, you're going to have the support of the super user leader, and you're going to get all the recognition that comes with it. And you know, if you run gamification strategy on your program, you also get prizes, which we do in our case here. So I think it's easy to work around this challenge, right? Showing how the super user network is going to save time in the long run. And then on the third bullet point, Sun is dependent on projects. So we talked about it. It's important that we understand that super user networks have a lot of value even outside of major projects. Lack of metrics. So my tip here is measure everything you can. Okay, from number of trainees, number of downloads, from how many hours of training you delivered, to even, you know, how much time you are saving now that you have that new knowledge. Just measure everything you can, truly, you know, everything you can measure, because you can use that data to show the value of your program, okay? And then lack of all kinds of support. So I talked a little bit about executive support. They are, you know, the ones signing the checks, so that's important. But in my case here, in my company, I also need HR. I need a lot of support from HR. Everything from identifying who the new hires are that need more training or that need more support initially to use our systems, to HR letting me know when, you know, some employee in China who is also a super user is about to leave the company. You know, that helps me a lot when I'm managing my super user networks, knowing when people are leaving, right? I know it sounds very basic, but you need HR in order to have control when you have a global program. So it's important to have support from everyone. And then I have some other challenge that I put down here so we can think about. Lack of motivation. Here we use gamification to motivate our super users, among other things, but gamification is a big one. They accumulate points, and they participate in drawings where they win things like iPads, right? If it's a global program, you're gonna have time differences. Lately, I've just been dealing with that by working late at night. You know, meetings with China happen 8, 9 p.m. in my case. But, you know, it's just something to be aware of. Language barriers, you might have that. Succession plan, that's a big thing too. So what happens to that super user in China that now left the company and the program? Who is going to come and takes his or her place, right? And having a super manager position, a Sun manager position, where you have someone that has a big chunk of time dedicated to running the program. I know a lot of companies out there just assume that super user networks just happen out of thin air. And if you are on this call, you know it's not the case, right? So it's important to say, look, we need someone to manage the program, really manage the program. All right, 1 minute. Any final comments, questions?
Now, I just want to say, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's really great. Thanks, Gus.
You're very welcome. Diego, you have any last comments?
Yeah, no, I think just to finish on a positive note, that there are many challenges, I think, but my experience is that the benefits and the value of the network definitely outweighs them all. So it's no easy task. It's not for the faint of heart. And it's always there's always new challenges coming in, but everything that's worth it has that, right? So I think, yeah, these are some of the perks or some of the things that you have to go through. But luckily now we have so many resources available through SUNsource and through the network, and now we got people that we can exchange and interact with as opposed to just navigating through the whole thing ourselves. But definitely when you see the benefits of the SUNsource and when you see the value that it brings, that totally offsets all the challenges that we just talked about as well.
I couldn't agree more. 100% agree. We talked about the challenge. We have to recognize them, but I agree with Diego. Once you start putting the time and the work and doing it right, you'll see so much value that those challenges become nothing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Thank you, Ginger. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Carla and Debbie and Sandra.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Everyone have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.